Hey guys, how are you? Good or great or super great? All right, that's much better. I would think so, but it's Friday afternoon, and I know I'm one of the last people standing between you and the weekend. So I'm going to try to make this interesting, and I'm going to try to make this fun, and I'm going to try to make this fast. So as Ginny and Tyler, thank you for the introduction. And I think we should also probably just note and credit Megan and Steve for putting together what's a really amazing conference. Thank you guys for your leadership. But so I'm really excited to be here and talk to you, because if any of the things that I'm working on in the White House have any hope of traction, have any hope of getting somewhere after this administration, it's not going to be because of me, it's going to be because of you. Because what we are really trying to do is change the way people think about government and change the way that we go about serving and supporting the American people. That's really what, in my mind, many ways, this work is all about. So for me, this is a great opportunity to connect with all of you. I've spent most of my life outside of Washington, as was alluded to in the introduction. Most of my life in business, starting and scaling companies that were about creating social value and economic return. So I co-founded a company called Ethos Water, which some of you may know. A bottled water uses its profits to fund water projects around the world, and we sold to Starbucks. I started this thing called All for Good, the largest open source database of volunteer opportunities on the web. That got acquired by Points of Light. I ran this little company. Some of you may know Good Magazine. Anyone know Good Magazine? Two of you, great. We got to work on that. But basically, it's all been about, could we create value, both economically and socially, societally. And really, the reason why I came to the White House 2 years ago was to bring that same ethos of social entrepreneurship, those same ideas about creating impact into government, to change the way we work. And ultimately, really, when we talk about innovation in the business world, it's about scaling, finding new ways to solve all problems, and doing so for commercial benefit. But in government, social innovation, finding new ways to solve all problems, but in the public interest. That's what it's all about, really. So we've got this White House Office of Social Information, and we are focused on how we take these complex national problems and apply all of our resources to solve them. And today, the challenges are really great. There are always problems in life. But today, vis-a-vis where we are, as economic growth is going in the right direction but needs to go faster, as we're dealing with really pressing challenges on the environmental front in terms of income inequality, in terms of giving people the health care that they need, we're trying to apply strategies of social innovation to move more quickly and to make progress on our most important priorities. We think about social innovation as falling into really two buckets: human capital and financial capital. On the human capital front, it's about how do we harness our most vital and valuable natural resource, our most renewable resource, which is the energy and the ingenuity of the American people. So we work on models like national service. How many of you know AmeriCorps? Raise your hand. Great. How many of you are AmeriCorps alum? Raise your hand. Who served? Where'd you serve? What's your name and where'd you serve? Nicole, with what group? With Boys Girls Club? How about over here?
Syracuse for Habitat.
Habitat, awesome. How about I saw a hand over here? You know who you are. How about, I thought I saw one over there. Over here, in the blue shirt?
Community Mediation Maryland with the VISTA program.
Awesome. How about over here? Anybody? You. Mm-hmm.
VISTA in Colorado with Habitat for Humanity.
Awesome. Habitat for Humanity, Boys and Girls Club. Any Teach for America alum in the room? Any TFAers? Anyone who was with City Year? Ever heard of Youth Build? These are all AmeriCorps programs. We have 30,000 full-time AmeriCorps volunteers. You know how many applicants we had last year? 750,000. Think about that for a minute. So our vision, and guess what we find? The data shows that communities with a higher degree of civic participation, volunteering, voting, serving on boards, have a lower rate of unemployment. There's a correlation between civic health and economic resilience. So the president believes we've got to do everything that we can to build on that, which is why just last week he announced a new task force that's going to be chaired by the White House and the Corporation for National Community Service to get all of the agencies to create national service programs, to figure out how to leverage volunteers to accelerate progress on your priorities. And we've already got a model here. Have any of you heard of FEMA Corps? Anyone here from FEMA or DHS? There you are, the DHS table. So last year, as our friends, the three of them over here might know, we launched FEMA Corps, which is a program that uses AmeriCorps recruiting and training and services and support with FEMA. Created 2,000 new national service positions, nearly 2,000, who are doing disaster preparedness, relief, and recovery. They were on the ground after Hurricane Sandy in Mid-Atlantic in New York and New Jersey. They were on the ground after the tornadoes in Oklahoma. They've been on the ground in the West as we've had all these terrible fires this season. And so while they are literally strengthening and serving communities on the ground, they're getting skilled up in trades like emergency management or logistics or operations they can take with them into the workforce. And it will save the taxpayer $80 million this year. $80 million, because AmeriCorps members can do this at a much more, this kind of work at a much more economic rate than full-time contractors. So, tackling our national priorities, skilling up our participants and preparing them for the workforce, and saving the taxpayers money by delivering services the most cost-efficient way possible. That, to us, is like the next wave of national service that builds on the heritage of VISTA, builds on the heritage of Teach for America, builds on the heritage of the Peace Corps. Any Peace Corps members in the room? Yeah, it's great. And that's the goal, to find ways we can help create pathways for all Americans to serve. So that's one area of focus of ours. Second area, and so I would actually challenge all of you. How many of you work for the federal government? Thank you. So all of you have a stake in this. If we can figure out ways to use service and volunteering to quicken progress on our priorities. There's my email address, and there's my Twitter handle. Tell me what you think we should do. Where do you work? You? Defense. So what is the core that we can create that will help returning veterans and military families more effectively integrate into their communities? Where there's a will, there's a way. We can do it. Where do you work? Department of State. So again, we have the Peace Corps, but what are other ways we can deliver against the 3 Ds or the mandate that we have at the State Department and engage the American people in this work? Where do you work? NIH. So what about a health corps that facilitates access and enrolls people? NIH is more science-oriented, I suppose, but there are ways we can deliver on the needs of the American people and use service and volunteering to do that. Now, in addition to that work, we're also focused on facilitating financial capital, which is about how do we optimize scarce resources at a time when government has less, and yet needs are increasing across the country. And how can we get incremental private resources to solve our toughest social challenges? So we're thinking very creatively, launching things like innovation funds. Anyone here from CNCS? No one. How about Ed? Someone. You, right? So Ed, Secretary Duncan has done some amazing work in DepSec Shelton, incredible things like the Investing in Innovation Fund, the I3 Fund. $650 million fund, and it's all evidence-based. So it puts a little bit of money in promising efforts, more money to invest in what works. We've got some strong evidence. And almost, if you will, doubles down where we've got RCT-type information and evidence. Again, it's about thinking about that continuum of evidence. So we invest not based on congressional district, not based on population density, but instead we invest in what works. And then we evaluate our investments to make sure that they're doing the best that they can. Earlier this year, we made a big commitment to another one of these models of financial innovation. We call it Pay for Success. Anyone here familiar with Pay for Success? A couple people. What agency are you with?
HUD.
HUD, okay. And can you explain what Pay for Success is? I'm cold calling, which is, I know is, well, you don't have to. You're off the hook. But it's a really interesting approach. Some of you may know this model under a different name, social impact bonds. Anyone heard of that? A few vague nods. So look, this is a way of attracting private capital to fund evidence-based interventions that we know work. And this matters a lot at a time, again, when government is contracting in many ways. But we know there are models that can help solve these tough problems. So here's the model. Now, I'll give you an example, a real example. New York City, last August, Goldman Sachs announced a social impact bond, the other name for this, around recidivism. They worked with an organization called MDRC, terrific organization on the ground in New York City, working with first-time offenders. And what we know is that with a first-time offender, with an intervention on things like skills development, therapies, resume workshops, interview preparation, job placement, we have a high probability of lowering the rate of recidivism. And so the converse is true. Without those kinds of interventions, oftentimes, young people, first-time offenders, end up on the wrong track for the rest of their lives. We've got evidence-based strategies that we know work. The question is, where's the money to fund them? And so here's the model. Because those are, by the way, those preventative programs, the first to get cut very frequently. So pay for success. Here's the approach. New York City, Goldman puts $10 million into an MDRC to fund these recidivism reduction programs. And if the intervention succeeds, if the rate of recidivism is lowered by at least 10%, the city will pay Goldman Sachs back their principal, $10 million. And if after a 4-year period, and if the intervention is more successful, if it delivers results above 10%, 11, 12, 15, 20, Goldman can earn up to 22% on their money. They'll get paid back their principal with a return. Goldman can invest in a program to help keep kids out of jail. And if it works, they get their money back and then some. How can we afford to do that? Because the savings that incur by keeping kids out of jail more than pay for the program. And still there's a delta there that the city can enjoy, that the taxpayer can enjoy, that can go to more programs. So imagine this. Suddenly Goldman Sachs has the prospect of a return that's not correlated to commodity prices, but that's about making a difference in a community. The nonprofit has cash flows for a program that they know how to deliver. And the city, by the way, the city, what does the city pay if the recidivism rate, if the program fails? Or if it only reduces the rate of recidivism by 5%, or 7%, or 9%? What does the city pay? 0. The city only pays for success. So why would Goldman do this? Well, in a moment when interest rates are de minimis, they're looking for new sources of return, they're trying to be creative. This is actually kind of interesting for them. And for us, it's a very interesting way to amplify to invest in what works and to amplify what's effective. In the budget this year, we proposed $200 million for pilots on Pay for Success. And we proposed a $300 million fund at the Treasury Department that will deliver the kind of credit enhancements and maybe even some grant payments for outcomes, direct grants for outcome payments. Nearly a $500 million commitment because we believe in paying for success, because we think we can create new models that attract new capital, again, to invest in what works, to scale what's effective, and to strengthen communities on the ground. And then finally, the last thing I'll point out is just last month, in the run-up to the G8 meeting in London, we launched something called the National Impact Initiative, which was focused on how can we facilitate and spread social entrepreneurship and increase impact investing. Anyone here work at the SBA, or raise your hand? The SBA is doing some great work in this area. Administrator Mills has been visionary. There are funds. There's the SBIC Impact Fund, which put $1 billion aside to invest in funds that support social enterprises. Or on the development side, anyone here work at OPIC or USAID? Both agencies are doing great work to invest in and build capacity of different models and, again, invest in funds that are doing impact investing, trying to drive an economic return and create social benefit. Because ultimately, if we want to have this middle out moment, if we want to have this time where, again, we try to strengthen our economy, it's got to be about, at the same time, supporting our communities. You can't have one but not the other. And ultimately, that's what social innovation is all about. Can we find new ways to solve all problems by harnessing our human capital and facilitating more financial capital? So we leverage all of our resources to make an impact on where it matters most, on the ground in communities. Because when our communities are strong, our economy is strong. And when our economy is strong, everyone should win. So that's my Twitter handle and email. You know how to find me. I've got a couple minutes. I'm happy to take a question or two if you have them. And if you don't, I will run out of here to catch the 4 o'clock Wolverine showing. Yeah, over here.
So there's Pay for Success.
Tell me your name and what agency you're with.
My name is Audrey Schaefer, and I work for the Defense Department.
Awesome.
I'm actually really intrigued by what you talked about with the Pay for Success program.
Great.
And I'm curious if you've thought about allowing
Aha! Yes, we have. So, I mean, when I say we have, I think that the creating opportunities for investors is actually not really our role. We should create the conditions in which entrepreneurship can flourish, in which investment can prosper. But we wouldn't directly create that. But what I can tell you is I happen to know that some very large commercial banks, places where many of you probably keep your money, and big places like Goldman Sachs are building these models today. Now, we certainly believe in crowdfunding. The Jobs Act is something that we pushed. That's going to allow us, if we get all the things approved, it's a work in process. Many of you know about this, rulemakings, et cetera. But we are enthusiastic about the power of unlocking individual investors' capacity to invest in social change. So we really believe in that. Question over here. What's your name and what agency?
Gary C. Powell, Department of Justice.
Awesome.
Now, do you think that any of these types of innovative approaches can help Detroit?
That's a great question. Did anybody hear that? So Gary from Justice said, can these approaches help Detroit? And like, to quote somebody, I can't remember his name, yes, we can. I can't remember. Absolutely we can. And absolutely we will. So again, thinking about, the President talked about some of this on Wednesday, thinking about how we can invest in communities to create sort of better economic results is the way to think about it. So there's a whole process that we've got underway to think about Detroit and some of these other areas. I will tell you, like that SBA Impact Fund, it first focused on Michigan. And we're also encouraged not just by what we can do from a government perspective, but what the private sector can do. One of the most exciting projects that I have seen in the last several years is what Whole Foods is doing in Detroit. Anyone familiar with that? Whole Foods, which is a remarkable company, sort of has opened up a new format store in downtown Detroit, trying to bring healthy food and address the food desert issue, the nutrition issue in the inner city. It's brilliant. And we've seen that businesses like Whole Foods have this sort of cascading effect and accretive impact where they attract other businesses and they build supply chains and do really good work. So the short answer is, do I think this can work? Absolutely yes. There's a way to create a core. There's a way to sort of pay for success. There's a way to leverage innovation funds to help the Detroits, to help the Indianapolises, to help the Clevelands, to help those cities in the Midwest and those cities across the country, as well as rural environments and tribal communities that are struggling with some of this. Absolutely, yes. Question over here. What's your name and what agency?
I'm Russell, and I'm from the FDIC. And what would be a good way to push these kinds of innovations to independent government corporations such as the FDIC and other things? Because we have a harder time getting these things pushed through since we are kind of separate.
Okay, so to answer your question, it's a great question, is how do we take the social innovation and put them in like the independent quasi-governmental corporation like the FDIC, or there are a number of others. So I will answer that question with a suggestion, because I might not have the direct answer, but if you were asking me, I think that one way that Ginny and Tyler could leave their mark on NextGen is by creating a working group to figure this out. So, you're on, and you've got your first recruit right there. So I expect to be back in a year, and I expect to find out what your working group has done to figure out how we can bring this. And maybe we can do that meeting where you give me your report back at the White House. All right? What else? 2 more questions. Or not? That's it? Anyone else want to go see Wolverine? Oh, yeah, over here.
I want to go see Wolverine.
Okay, great.
How do you,
Tell me your name, what agency?
Jamel, Federal Retirement Thrift Investment Board. My question was, how do you, as, like, say you're a resident and you want to make an impact in, like, your local government,
Yeah.
but you're not involved, per se, as, like, an elected official. How do you go about trying to start something, like, from a grassroots perspective that kind of involves something like this?
That's a good question. So Jamil asked, so how at a local level can I make an impact even outside of government? Maybe through a nonprofit. So this, fair way, did I get that right, more or less? So This country has an almost unique heritage of volunteerism. Montesquieu talked about it. Presidents from FDR to Kennedy to Bill Clinton have lifted it up. And today we're in this moment now where our commander-in-chief is a community organizer-in-chief who deeply believes in this work. And I actually think the most exciting, he would say to you, he said to me, the most exciting things are happening, not here in Washington, at least not in our cubicles at the White House. They're happening on the ground in cities and towns and schools and community centers all over the country. That's where social entrepreneurship is crackling. That's where there's an enormous amount of kinetic energy. So how do you do it? You start by just raising your hand. I think from the Boys and Girls Club that got mentioned earlier, to get into the local community center, there are tons of exciting ways that you can bring some of these ideas to animate and electrify and charge up these organizations. And there are great resources out there. I'll give you a couple thoughts. So one is the Stanford Social Innovation Review, a fantastic journal where you've got, it's kind of big thinky in a way, but it's a terrific place for insight. Another one is the Skull World Forum, an amazing website with lots of really great information there about what's happening in this field. Payforsuccess.org is a great place to learn about where the Pay for Success movement is. There are another good resource is independentsector.org, great information about the field. There are so many resources, so many great blogs, so many there's so much capacity available today, you just got to tap into it. And it's all out there. Last question. Going once, going twice. Guess I'm going to the movies.
I guess so.
Oh, is there a question over here? I can't see because of the lights. Yes. What's your name and what agency are you from? I love OPM. Let's all give OPM a round of applause. OPM really rocks. That's not an exaggeration. Some really cool stuff's come out of OPM. Is there a mic so we can all hear her?
So I was wondering, I love
better.
The working group, and I would like to volunteer.
You're on.
And I was wondering, can...
She laughs. It's like, be careful what you wish for.
Can the social entrepreneurship and what you've challenged us to do, and perhaps there are already some challenges happening that we can engage in a different capacity, similar to like the digital government strategy, the challenges in open government and open data, if something like that perhaps is already taking place,
right? Or
if we could create a part of that. And I'm thinking about my 12-year-old daughter and all the young people, younger, next generation down, how we can bring them with us. So it would actually be a partnership from what we're doing and reaching to our community, so we do it collaboratively.
Well, I think some of the folks from the Labor Department have a problem to get your 12-year-old daughter lined up at one of these work. There may be some child labor laws.
No, I didn't mean it that way.
And I think, frankly, you're from OPM. I shouldn't be the one telling you that, but
no,
that's my guess.
I said, Jonathan, I'm not speaking on behalf of my agency.
Okay.
No, I was thinking of the community component and integrating government and community.
In some ways, I feel like you are less asking if I might, you're less asking a question than making a statement. And the idea of figuring out how to plug next gen into this stream of work, I don't think there is like one discrete thing to say. It's rather an ongoing process. So, as I said earlier, as you create your subcommittee on social innovation, that's going to figure out how to work with agencies as well as with the independent corporations to figure out how you guys can harness human capital and facilitate financial capital. I'm excited to get Angela involved in that work group. Maybe her daughter can be an intern. And although now there's some rules around that as well, I better be careful. No, but seriously, let's figure out how to bring you in, whether it's open data or national service or any of the other processes that are underway. Like I said at the start of this, none of this works, none of it, if you guys aren't invested in it. And when I say invested, I don't mean in some cautious way. I mean what the president calls, he says this is an all hands on deck moment, and we need you to be all in if we want all of this to be successful. So you know how to get in touch with me. It's right up there. I got to run. I look forward to being in touch. Okay, guys? Have a good weekend.